Hi everybody, I'm Christy Knipe and I want to take a minute to show you the page that I made for our wiki page assignment. Again, like some of my other assignments have been, it's a little bit customized and a little different than the standard wiki page, and so with our instructor's permission I created something that's really a little bit of a project management website for my student publications, and it's called Trello.com. So this is the main page, and from it you can see that there are an example. It's kind of like whiteboards is how they described it, and I heard about this from another journalism teacher who said that she has used it for keeping track of the projects and assignments that her kids have. It's sort of like having a whole bunch of whiteboards that you can write on and assign things, and everybody who's involved in the project can contribute to it and can communicate with each other about when they have deadlines and what their contents are, and various different things like that. So the way it works is that you create a board, and I'm showing these right in the center of the screen. The welcome board is one that it came with when I created the account, and it just is kind of a place where the boards are instructions for how to use the Trello product or whatever. And so I created the other two, one for my yearbook and one for my newspaper. And so I'll show you kind of a walkthrough of each of those. I did the newspaper one first. And so this is a list that I've created. It started off, there were like 3 blank ones on the page, and I added some to it because we actually have 6 pages of the newspaper, so I made a list for each one, and then we have kind of a miscellaneous board for other information to go on. And I actually used this for the last edition of the newspaper that we published this year. So the way that you add a list is just to click on it over here. This is sort of like another bank of options of things that you can do. And so I added a list to it, and it just comes up with another example. And it's in 8th position, which means it comes up over on the end. If I decide that I don't need that one, I think I can go in and delete it. I don't remember how. Anyway, I could get rid of it, I think. I'm not exactly sure how that works yet, but oh, here we go. If I need to, I archive them means you put them away whenever they're finished. I'm not exactly sure how to delete one because I haven't had to do that yet, I guess. I'm sorry. But anyway, you can add new lists, and then on the list you put what are called cards, and you can see down here at the bottom of each one it says add a card. When I click on that, I have the option of adding another story, subject, like for our entertainment page. If we had a band concert, I could add a card for that, and so then it's another assignment that's on the list. And I've gone through and done some samples of things on each of these. I didn't actually have the kids using this yet because they're not all members of Trello, and I wanted to kind of get it set up and sort of ghost work it alongside of them so that I can really launch it with them in the fall. So the way that I've set these up so far, the first card on page 1 is a good example of that. If I click on it, it opens this dialog box to give me some more options. There are labels, and I have edited them so that they are for each page of the publication. I could make them whatever. So far I haven't found anything else that we need to label them with. For the newspaper, I have a different kind of list for the yearbook, however. So this goes on the news page. I can see a place where this would be helpful to us is that next year we're not just talking about putting news on page 1 and features on page 3, and opinions on page 2, but they might be intermixed. So we might have news stories on page 1 and a feature on page 1, or a sports story on page 1. And so then the category, the kind of story it is versus the page where it goes being the name of the card would be a little bit different. Or I'm sorry, being the name of the list would be a little bit different. So you can label them, and they're color-coded, and then that shows up here where this little color bar is on each of the cards. You can also add a checklist, and so I created a checklist already that is kind of a standard, the steps in the process, and then as they get done, the person who accomplishes them can check it here, and then eventually when the whole thing's checked, did you notice that then changed what some of the options look like over here? So you can check and uncheck them, and the status bar progresses about how close to finished this page really is. And then there's a place here for members, and members would be that each person who's on the staff, each one of my kids, would have a membership and would be considered a member of this page, so they would be able to add information. We could assign it to them, so when I went in to make assignments I could type in the name of the members. Right now the only member who really shows up here is MHS Student Publications, which is me. That's the name that I used to sign this up. But so it's assigned to them, and that's why there's a little colored dot in here that's who's working on it at this point. It also shows activity on the bottom of the screen, so everything that has happened to this card, and it shows when it happened. That's all there, so I, as the teacher, could go back in and check and make sure, you know, what progress everybody's doing, even as they are adding to the information on the card. Um, the color coding up here changes as it gets, you know, with a due date, if it was changed, if it's past due, or if it's coming up the next day. They change color so that it can kind of jump out at the kids at what needs to be done at a certain time. Let me go to another one and add the checklist so you can see how that works. This one I haven't put a checklist on yet. You just click on Add Checklist, and then you can type the name for it here. And you also have the option of like copying something that already exists as a checklist, and it shows you where you've used them before. So for this particular story, I might want to use the story checklist for it for right now. So that's what I want the content to be, and I actually have to type the name in myself, so I could make it a totally different name, even if it had all of the same characteristics of story checklist, but that works for what I'm doing. So I'll tell it add, and now it came up with that list, and I can say, oh, this one has already actually been assigned, and they did the story by deadline. So I just have to close out of this window, and it has saved that information for me. The way that members get added is by clicking on them over here, and you just type in their email. I'll put in my Gmail address. And then it has sent me, this is gray because it has sent me a request, but I haven't accepted it yet. So then I don't actually know if I can, let me go back in and see if I can assign this to, yeah, see, I don't have the option yet until that person accepts that. And I don't think it has to be a Gmail address, but Trello works with all of the Google products. So we use Google Docs to actually write our stories on, and I'm going to be able to attach those files here, things from Google Drive. We don't use Dropbox, and the kids don't have software on the computers that they do very much of their writing with, so that's probably not going to be an option. However, we can attach files from the computer when someone has a photography assignment, for example. They can actually attach the photos here, and we'll be able to download them on another computer, you know, to the right place where they can get used by the next person. So that will be kind of handy as well. Once it's all finished and the publication is complete, then you can archive the pages so that you have them stored. If we decided that we needed to rearrange the order of these things, for example, about once a month my kids actually do an 8-page publication instead of a 6-page. So if that was one of these, and we might put on here, it's called a double truck in the middle of the page. So my naming system is the year, the month, the date, and the double truck is pages 6 and 7. So if that's, you know, a card that we added for that, and the future might be graduation that they're covering, and I might decide, you know what, I need to rearrange the order of pages. I can just take a hold of these lists and drag them, move them around, and then the stuff that we put on our trending page, and it might not be page 6 anymore, could change that one so that it's page 8. It doesn't impact the other stuff that's on the page, it just moves that around. So sometimes we rearrange the order of things depending on what the contents are, where we want stuff to go. So you can rearrange the cards, like the lists like that. So that's an example of the newspaper side. For the yearbook side, I would run it a little bit differently. I created a list for each deadline that we have with our printing company, and that's broken down in 4. There would actually be a 5th one because we print a supplemental publication at the end of the school year that I would probably go in and add a card or add a list for. And then each of these cards is a spread, which is 2 pages that face each other in the yearbook. So I've gone through and created all of those based on what we did for this year's yearbook. My editor for next year will actually go through and modify these as she sees fit to actually make the assignments, because that's something that the student editor really comes up with. It's called the ladder of a yearbook, of a publication, and she'll go through and actually modify these. I went in and did something a little different with the list, so I'll show you on one of the pages. The labels, I mean. I assigned each of our editors of the yearbook for next year a colored label, and then I could click on the label to show whose responsibility it is to make sure that the people doing that page get it done correctly. So Courtney is the editor. She would be in charge of the opening page 2 and 3. Doesn't mean that she does all of these steps that are on my checklist, but she's the ultimate person who's going to determine whether that page is done correctly or not. So I color-coded it for her, and again, when I clicked on her name, you can see that over here on the side, this turned green, so that represents her. The little icon for the checklist is there because I created a yearbook spread checklist. That's all the steps that have to happen to it in order for them to have done it correctly. And then down here at the bottom is the list of activities that have been done on that page so far. So that's kind of a run through of how it works. Again, if we decided we needed to move contents around, like maybe we don't want all these freshmen to be on deadline 2, you can move cards from one list to another list, and you can rearrange the order of them if you want them to be someplace else for some reason. I can drop this at the bottom of the list, or could move around the order of them that I want them to show up. You can also filter how they show up. Over here where it says filter cards, if I wanted to just be able to show Courtney what things in deadline 1 were her responsibility, I can filter it by her, and then it gets rid of everything else, and it only shows her assignments, which would be handy for her to be able to do, to go in and see the things that she has an impact on in our collection of stuff without having to look at everybody else's things. So that's kind of handy too. I know this isn't quite a wiki. I mean, it sort of is. It has some of the same characteristics where different people are contributing to it, and there's a lot more that can be done with it that I haven't figured out how to do yet. I've only seen from this other teacher who told me about it. But I think it's going to be really helpful for organizing information. It's going to be a really good piece of technology for our students, and something where they can take the really minimum stuff that we do with Google Drive, where we use documents and spreadsheets to manage our information there. It's really going to expand that. And I think the kids will enjoy it. Especially because my classroom has one whiteboard that is also my projector board, and they're always wanting to write notes and things for each other in different classes and whatever, and leave little reminders up there. I think this will take the place of that, and it will be really nice for them. So I hope this is interesting. Maybe it's something that you'll be able to use in your class as well. And I will, when I post the information on our Google Circle, I will put the address for how you can go in and find it. Thanks.